The girl and her mother's obsession. In the heart of Nandi village, where the river whispered secrets to the trees and the sun bathed the land in golden warmth, lived a young woman named Ayanda. She was known for her gentle nature, her laughter that rang like chimes in the wind, and the kindness that radiated from her soul. Though Ayanda was beautiful, she was not the most beautiful girl in the village, a fact that tormented her mother, Mama Nandi. Mama Nandi was a woman of sharp eyes and sharper ambitions. She had once been the most desired woman in the village, but time had stolen her youth, leaving behind a woman who could not accept the passage of years. She had one plan, one obsession: her daughter Ayanda must marry Kato, the son of the richest man in the village. "Ayanda, you are wasting time," Mama Nandi would scold, her voice sharp like a cutting stone. "Kato's family owns the finest lands. They have gold, cattle, and connections. If you marry him, we will never know hunger again." But Ayanda, with her quiet heart, did not dream of wealth. She dreamed of a man who would love her for who she was, not for how she looked. She dreamed of a life of happiness, not a cage made of gold. "Mother," Ayanda would say, her voice gentle but firm, "Kato does not even see me." "Then make him see you," Mama Nandi snapped. "You walk like a simple village girl. You should sway your hips like a river reed. You should dress in fine colors, not these plain cloths. You are wasting the beauty the ancestors gave you." But Ayanda did not want to be someone she was not. The Festival of Choosing. Each year, the village held the Festival of Choosing, where the most eligible young men would select their brides. It was a time of music, dance, and celebration. For years, Mama Nandi had waited for Kato to choose Ayanda, but each time, he ignored her. This year, Ayanda was dressed in red and gold, her mother's doing. Mama Nandi had spent the last of their money buying fine oils for Ayanda's skin, hoping to make her daughter stand out. As the young men walked through the festival grounds, Kato arrived in his richly embroidered robe, his posture dripping with pride. Mama Nandi pushed Ayanda forward. "Go, my daughter. Let him see you." Ayanda sighed but obeyed. She walked past Kato, her head held high, but Kato barely glanced at her. His eyes were already on another girl, Sathini, the daughter of a wealthy trader. As Sathini laughed and twirled, her silk garments catching the wind, Kato stepped forward and placed a beaded bracelet around her wrist, the sign of his choice. The crowd cheered, and Mama Nandi stiffened in rage. "That girl," she hissed. "What does she have that you do not?" Ayanda felt a sting in her heart, but she simply bowed her head. "Perhaps he was never meant for me, mother." But Mama Nandi was not a woman who accepted fate so easily. A visit from Auntie Zara. That evening, as the festival lights flickered in the distance, an old friend arrived at their doorstep, Auntie Zara, a woman from the city. Zara had once lived in the village, but she had left long ago, returning only on rare occasions. She was a woman of sharp eyes, painted lips, and perfume that smelled like flowers from another world. "Ah, Nandi, you have not changed." Zara laughed, stepping inside with a basket of sweet fruits. "And this must be Ayanda." "Beautiful, yes, but there is something missing." Mama Nandi's eyes gleamed. "I have done everything. But that fool of a boy does not see her." Zara smirked. "That is because village beauty is simple. The world has changed, my dear. There are ways to make a girl truly unforgettable." Ayanda felt a chill run down her spine. "What ways?" she asked cautiously. Zara leaned forward, her voice a whisper. "In the city, there are modern treatments. They can enhance beauty, reshape the body, make a woman look irresistible." Mama Nandi gasped in delight. "Is it magic?" Zara laughed. "No, my dear. It is better than magic. It is science. In the city, women no longer rely on the gifts of the ancestors alone. They shape themselves into what men desire." Ayanda felt her stomach turn. "That is unnatural," she said softly. "Unnatural?" Zara laughed again. "My dear girl, what is natural? A bird without wings cannot fly, but if you give it wings, it soars. Is that unnatural? No. It is power. Mama Nandi was already convinced. Where can we go? She asked eagerly. Zara smiled. Come with me to the city. I will introduce you to the people who can make Ayanda truly extraordinary. Ayanda shook her head. No, Mama. I do not want this. Mama Nandi's eyes flashed with anger. Then what do you want? To live your life as a forgotten girl? To die in this village without a husband, without wealth, without respect? Ayanda stood firm. I want to be loved for who I am. Her mother's voice was sharp as a blade. Love will not feed your children, Ayanda. Love will not buy you fine clothes or give you a comfortable home. You will do this, and that is final. Ayanda stared at her mother, feeling a storm rise in her heart. She had never disobeyed Mama Nandi before, but something told her that if she did not stand firm now, she would lose herself forever. No, she said, her voice steady. I will not do it. A mother's desperation. That night, Mama Nandi tossed and turned in her sleep. She could not accept Ayanda's refusal. She does not understand, she whispered to herself. She is just a foolish girl. I must make the choice for her. I must do what is best for our family. With a determined heart, she wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and slipped out of the house. She walked through the quiet village, past the sleeping huts, and into the darkness of the trees. She knew where to go. She had heard of the herbalist in the forest, a man who dealt in things beyond the understanding of ordinary people. If Ayanda would not go willingly, then Mama Nandi would make her go. The moon watched in silence as Mama Nandi disappeared into the shadows, her heart set on a path that would change her daughter's fate forever. The forbidden ritual and the beauty transformation. The night was silent, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the rustling of leaves as Mama Nandi stepped deeper into the forest. The path was barely visible, lit only by the pale glow of the moon. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from desperation. She had heard whispers of the old herbalist, a man who lived beyond the river, where the land was thick with shadows and secrets. The villagers feared him, speaking of curses and strange powers, but Mama Nandi did not fear magic, she feared poverty. Finally, she reached a small hut made of dried reeds and red clay. Smoke curled from the roof, carrying the scent of burning herbs. Mama Nandi swallowed her nerves and knocked on the wooden door. A voice, low and rough like gravel, answered from within. Enter. She stepped inside, immediately hit by the thick scent of earth, decay, and something unplaceable. The herbalist, an old man with milky white eyes and a face lined with time and secrets, sat cross-legged in the dim light. You have come for something you should not seek, he said before she could speak. Mama Nandi shivered but held her ground. I have come for my daughter's future. The herbalist tilted his head, listening. My daughter must become the most beautiful woman in the village, she continued. She must have a body that no man can ignore. There is a man, Cato, the richest son in the land, he must want her. Tell me what I must do. The herbalist exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. Beauty is a blessing, but beauty taken unnaturally comes at a price, he murmured. I will pay any price, she said quickly. His lips curled slightly, half amusement, half warning. There is a way, he admitted. But once begun, it cannot be undone. The girl must drink the elixir of the changing moon. It will reshape her, give her the curves and allure of a goddess. But the body you steal is not your own. It must be fed. Fed? Mama Nandi frowned. Fed with what? The herbalist did not answer immediately. He simply reached into the darkness beside him and produced a small clay vial, filled with a thick, shimmering liquid the color of a sunset. Give this to your daughter before the next full moon. It must be mixed with oil from the baobab tree and rubbed into her skin. She will not resist. Mama Nandi reached for the vial, but before her fingers touched it, the herbalist gripped her wrist with surprising strength. Mark my words, woman. The body you change is not the body that will last. Be sure this is what you want. Mama Nandi, blinded by her own ambition, ignored the warning. The trap is set. The next morning, Ayanda woke up to the scent of sweet oil. She sat up groggily, rubbing her eyes, and saw her mother at her bedside, smiling. Good morning, my beautiful daughter, Mama Nandi cooed. I have brought you a special treatment from the city. It is made from baobab oil, meant to make your skin glow like the sunrise. Ayanda stretched. Mother, I do not need this. Shoo, child, Mama Nandi insisted, dipping her fingers into the golden liquid, mixed secretly with the herbalist's elixir. Just let me do this for you. Hesitantly, Ayanda allowed it. The oil was warm, tingling against her skin, but it felt different. A strange heat spread through her body, and a dizziness settled in her mind. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she woke up, she felt different. The transformation. The change was subtle at first. Her skin became unnaturally smooth, glowing in the sunlight. Her waist narrowed, her hips curved, and her once small frame blossomed into something entirely new. When she stepped outside, the villagers gasped. By the ancestors! Is that Ayanda? She felt their eyes on her, wide with admiration and disbelief. Even Kato, who had never truly seen her before, stopped mid-step, staring. Who is this goddess? He murmured under his breath. Mama Nandi beamed with triumph. At the evening market, people whispered, their admiration turning to jealousy. What happened to her? She was always pretty, but now, she is unreal. Even Sathini, Kato's chosen bride, felt the shift. Kato had once looked at her with longing, but now his eyes followed Ayanda instead. And then, the moment Mama Nandi had waited for came. Kato approached Ayanda, his arrogance softened, his interest undeniable. You have changed, he said, his voice lower than usual. Ayanda hesitated. She did not feel different inside, but the way the world now treated her had changed entirely. You are beautiful, Kato continued, brushing a hand along her arm. Mama Nandi watched from the shadows, smiling. Yes, she whispered. Yes, it is working. But that night, as Ayanda stared into the river's reflection, something felt wrong. Her body was hers, yet it felt like it wasn't. Something had been taken from her, and she did not know what. A rising hunger. Days passed, and the admiration only grew stronger. Ayanda could not walk through the village without men stopping in their tracks. Gifts were left at her door, women asked for her beauty secret, and Kato, once indifferent, now followed her like a shadow. Mama Nandi was beside herself with joy. But then, the hunger started. It was subtle at first, a strange, empty feeling in her stomach. No amount of food satisfied it. Then, the itching began. Ayanda would wake in the middle of the night, scratching at her arms, her legs, her sides. And one morning, as she bathed in the river, she saw it, a small piece of skin peeling away, revealing something darker underneath. She blinked. The skin was raw, almost blackened, unnatural. Panic swelled in her chest. She reached to touch it, but as soon as her fingers brushed the wound, a sharp pain shot through her body. She gasped. Mother! She whispered. What is happening to me? The beginning of the curse. Mama Nandi, noticing her daughter's distress, brushed it off. It is just the change, my dear, she said. Beauty comes at a cost. But my body. Shoo, do not speak foolishness. Mama Nandi hissed. Kato is watching you now.
Desperate measures. Mama Nandi, unwilling to accept fate, dragged Ayanda to the village herbalist. The elderly woman, bent with age but sharp in mind, took one look at Ayanda and recoiled. You meddled where you should not have, the herbalist said, voice laced with warning. This is no sickness of the body. This is a sickness of the soul. Mama Nandi shook her head violently. No. This is a mistake. You must have something, some root, some potion, to fix her. The herbalist sighed and gestured for Ayanda to sit. With careful hands, she unwrapped Ayanda's shawl and examined her closely. What she saw made her lips press into a tight line. "You did not just drink a potion, did you?" she asked softly. Mama Nandi hesitated. "What do you mean?" The herbalist narrowed her eyes. "This is not just city medicine. This is something else. Something darker. Tell me everything." Mama Nandi reluctantly confessed. She told the woman about the secret elixir, the forest herbalist, the promise of unnatural beauty. When she was done, the room fell into a heavy silence. "You fool," the herbalist hissed. Mama Nandi flinched. "What? Why?" The old woman grabbed the clay bowl, filling it with dark water. She murmured an incantation, waving her hands over the liquid. Slowly, the surface began to ripple, revealing a vision. It showed Ayanda's reflection, but her skin was no longer her own. Beneath her flesh, something shifted, like shadows crawling just underneath the surface. The old woman stared in horror. "This is not a simple potion," she whispered. "This is a spirit's price." Mama Nandi paled. "What do you mean?" The herbalist turned to Ayanda, her expression grim. "You did not gain beauty. You took it from something that was never meant to be touched." Ayanda's stomach churned. "Took it? From what?" The herbalist pressed a trembling hand to Ayanda's forehead. "Your beauty was borrowed. But the body must balance itself. What was taken must be given back." Ayanda felt her breath catch. "Then what happens to me?" The herbalist closed her eyes. "You are already seeing the signs, aren't you? The hunger that cannot be satisfied. The skin that is no longer your own. The pain creeping into your bones. This is the curse of stolen beauty." Ayanda's eyes filled with tears. "You mean I will die?" The old woman hesitated. "Perhaps. Or you will become something else." Ayanda felt a deep, primal fear rise in her chest. Something else. What did that mean? A final warning. Mama Nandi shook her head, refusing to accept it. "No. There must be a cure. Tell us what we must do." The herbalist exhaled, her face lined with sorrow. "There is only one way to undo this," she finally said. Ayanda gripped the edge of her seat. "Tell me." "You must return what was stolen," the herbalist said. Ayanda stared at her, confused. "Return it, how?" The herbalist's eyes darkened. "The spirit that gave you beauty still waits. And it is hungry. If you do not feed it, it will take what it is owed." Mama Nandi froze. "Feed it? With what?" The herbalist's voice dropped to a whisper. "With another life." Ayanda's blood ran cold. Another life. A sacrifice. She felt sick. "You mean I must curse someone else to save myself?" The old woman did not speak. Because they all knew the answer. Ayanda pushed away from the table, shaking her head violently. "No. No, I won't do it. I won't condemn another person." Mama Nandi, however, was not so quick to refuse. Her mind was already racing, already plotting. A sacrifice. Who would be missed? Who could they choose? But Ayanda saw the glint in her mother's eye. And suddenly, she understood. Her mother had always been willing to do whatever it took to secure her future. And now, she would do it again. Ayanda grabbed her mother's arm, her voice shaking. "Don't," she whispered. "I will not live at the cost of another life." Mama Nandi looked at her daughter, torn between fear and desperation. "You don't understand," she hissed. "You will die if we don't do this." Ayanda stared at her mother, a deep sadness filling her heart. Then let me die. The village turns against her. The days passed, and Ayanda's condition worsened. The village had fully turned against her now. People avoided her, mothers pulled their children away when she walked past. Her beauty, once the pride of the village, was now a curse that made her an outcast. The whispers followed her wherever she went. She is cursed. She is becoming something unnatural. Did you hear? Kato's father has forbidden anyone from speaking to her. Even her closest childhood friends refused to meet her gaze. And Mama Nandi. She had withdrawn into silence, staring blankly at the walls, refusing to eat. She had won everything. And now, she had lost it all. A terrible choice. One evening, as Ayanda sat by the river, watching the water ripple beneath the moonlight, she made her decision. She would not become a monster. She would not take another life just to save herself. Instead, she would face whatever was coming. With one final breath, she stood up, letting the shawl fall from her shoulders. She walked toward the forest, the place where this had all begun. She would return to where the spirit had first been summoned. And she would face her fate. Whatever it may be. The journey to redemption. The wind howled through the trees as Ayanda stepped into the dark forest alone. The weight of her decision pressed on her shoulders, but her heart was calm. For the first time since this nightmare began, she had chosen her own path. She would not trade another life for her own. She would not run from the price she had to pay. If she was meant to die, then so be it. She walked deeper into the trees, her breath visible in the cool night air. The path to the herbalist's hut was familiar, but tonight, it felt different, as if the very land was watching her. Somewhere in the shadows, an owl hooted, and the rustling of leaves sent a shiver down her spine. Still, she did not stop. Because Ayanda knew this must end where it began. The confrontation. When she finally reached the clearing, the small hut stood before her, its walls woven from reeds, its door slightly ajar. Smoke curled from the chimney, but the air was unnaturally still. She stepped forward. The door creaked open before she even touched it. Inside, the herbalist sat waiting, his pale eyes watching her with unreadable intensity. "I knew you would return," he said simply. Ayanda swallowed, stepping inside. "You knew this would happen," she accused. "You knew this curse would come upon me." The herbalist exhaled. "I warned your mother." She did not listen. Ayanda shook her head. "I do not care what my mother did. I am here for answers. Tell me how to end this." The herbalist studied her for a long moment. Then, he reached into the shadows and pulled out a clay bowl filled with blackened water. "Look," he said. Ayanda hesitated before stepping forward. She peered into the bowl and gasped. Her reflection was gone. Instead, a shifting, dark figure stared back at her, its shape twisting, its eyes hollow and empty. It opened its mouth, but no sound came out. Ayanda staggered back. "What is this?" she whispered. The herbalist's voice was grave. "This is what remains of the beauty you borrowed. It is no longer yours." Ayanda felt a cold dread settle in her bones. "Then, what happens now?" The old man sighed. "Now, the spirit will claim what it is owed. A final choice." Ayanda felt her heart race. The spirit would take what was owed. Her life. Her soul. But she would not fight it. She had already made her choice. "I will not curse another in my place," she said, her voice steady. The herbalist nodded approvingly. "You are wiser than your mother," he murmured. Then, slowly, he reached into his robes and pulled out a bundle of dried leaves tied with red thread. "There is one last way," he said. Ayanda stared. "What is it?" He met her gaze, his expression unreadable. You can return what was stolen, not to another person, but to the earth itself. Ayanda felt hope stir in her chest. How? The herbalist handed her the bundle. Take this to the place where your mother first used the elixir. Burn them under the full moon. But be warned, this path is not without pain. Ayanda gripped the bundle tightly. I will do it. Because pain did not frighten her anymore. She had already suffered. And she would end this curse, once and for all. The ritual of return. That night, Ayanda walked alone to the river's edge. This was where her mother had first applied the cursed oil to her skin. The full moon hung overhead, bathing the land in silver light. She knelt by the riverbank, her fingers trembling as she unwrapped the bundle of herbs. Then, with a deep breath, she set them alight. The flames flickered, casting eerie shadows across the water. At first, nothing happened. Then, a sharp pain tore through Ayanda's body. She gasped, clutching her chest, her vision blurring. The curse was unraveling. Her skin burned, dark patches peeling away like ashes in the wind. She felt something leave her, something unseen, something ancient. The wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers Ayanda could not understand. Then, as suddenly as it began, the pain stopped. She collapsed to the ground, her breath shallow, her body weak. But when she looked down at her hands, her skin was her own again. The beauty was gone. The unnatural curves, the flawless perfection, all of it had vanished. But so had the curse. For the first time in weeks, Ayanda felt at peace. Mama Nandi's reckoning. When Ayanda returned home, the village was waiting. People stared in shock at the woman who had once been the most desired beauty in the land. She was no longer perfect. She was no longer admired. But Ayanda held her head high. She had survived. Mama Nandi rushed toward her, eyes frantic. Ayanda, what have you done? Ayanda looked at her mother, really looked at her. For the first time, she saw not a powerful woman, but a broken one. A woman who had sacrificed everything for vanity, only to lose it all. I ended it, Ayanda said simply. Her mother staggered back. But we could have had everything. Ayanda cut her off. We already had everything. We just didn't see it. Mama Nandi fell silent. For the first time in her life, she had no answer. Because deep down, she knew. Ayanda was right. She had ruined her daughter's life in pursuit of something meaningless. And now, she had nothing left. The true meaning of beauty. The village no longer whispered about Ayanda. Not because she was beautiful. Not because she was cursed. But because she had survived. And over time, her story became a warning. A tale told to young girls about the dangers of chasing artificial beauty. About the price of vanity. About a mother who lost everything, and a daughter who found herself again. And though Ayanda never married, never became the richest woman in the village, she became something far greater. She became wise. She became respected. She became free. The aftermath of the curse. The days after Ayanda's return were filled with silence. The village that had once celebrated her unnatural beauty now looked at her with quiet respect, mixed with a tinge of unease. She was not the same. She no longer turned heads. She no longer walked with the glow of enchantment. But there was something else in her eyes now. Something powerful. She was free. Yet, freedom came with a cost. And Mama Nandi paid the highest price. The mother's fall. The once proud Mama Nandi had become a shell of herself. She no longer boasted of her daughter's beauty. She no longer walked through the village with her head held high. Instead, she sat outside their hut, staring blankly at the dirt, muttering to herself. This was not how it was supposed to be, she would whisper. This was not how it was supposed to be. She had gained everything. And then, she had lost it all. The village no longer looked at her with envy, but with pity. She let her greed ruin her own daughter. She played with magic that was not hers to control. She should be ashamed. The whispers wounded her deeper than any blade ever could. Because the truth was clear, her own hands had destroyed her daughter. And there was no one left to blame. Ayanda's healing. Despite everything, Ayanda did not hate her mother. She could have. She had every reason to. But hatred was a poison, and Ayanda had already suffered enough. Instead, she spent her days helping others, young girls who had once envied her, women who had once longed for her perfection. Now, they listened to her words. Beauty is like the river, she would say. It changes. It flows. It never stays the same. At first, they did not believe her. But as time passed, they began to see the wisdom in her eyes. She was not the most beautiful woman anymore. But she was something greater. She was respected. Keto's shame. Keto, the man who had once abandoned her in disgust, never came near her again. He had moved on, marrying Sitini, the same woman he had once cast aside for Ayanda's unnatural beauty. But those who saw him said he was not the same. They said that sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, his eyes would drift toward Ayanda. And in those eyes was a quiet regret. Because now, he understood. He had never truly seen her at all. He had only seen the illusion. And in chasing that illusion, he had lost the chance to know the real Ayanda. But it was too late. Because Ayanda had already moved forward. And Keto. He would live knowing that he had thrown away something far more precious than beauty. Mama Nandi's final plea. One evening, as the sky burned with the colors of sunset, Mama Nandi finally broke her silence. Ayanda, she whispered, her voice hoarse from sorrow. Ayanda turned to her mother, meeting her eyes for the first time in weeks. There was no anger there. No blame. Only sadness. And something deeper, understanding. Mama Nandi fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I was wrong, she choked. I was blind. I thought I was giving you a future, but I was only taking it away. Ayanda stood still. The words she had longed to hear were finally spoken. But did they erase the pain? No. Nothing ever could. But forgiveness was not for the past. It was for the future. And so, Ayanda knelt beside her mother, taking her trembling hands in her own. I know, she whispered. And for the first time in her life, Mama Nandi wept, not out of anger, not out of frustration, but out of true regret. And Ayanda held her, just as a mother should have held a daughter. For the first time, they were not just mother and daughter. They were two women who had both suffered. And they would find healing together. The final lesson. The seasons changed, but the village never forgot. The tale of Ayanda and Mama Nandi was told in whispers, passed from mother to daughter, from elder to child. It was no longer the story of a beautiful girl who was admired by all. It was a warning. A warning about the dangers of vanity. A warning about what happens when you try to steal what was never yours. Ayanda's new path. Ayanda never sought another marriage. She never tried to reclaim her lost beauty. Instead, she found something greater. Wisdom. She spent her days teaching young girls, warning them against the temptations of false beauty and empty desires. Your worth is not in how you look, she would say. Your worth is in the kindness of your heart, in the strength of your spirit, in the wisdom of your mind. At first, many did not listen. But as time passed, they saw the truth in her words. They saw how she had survived. How she had found peace, even after losing everything. And they began to listen. Mama Nandi's redemption. As for Mama Nandi, her guilt never truly faded. But she did not let it destroy her. She spent the rest of her years in service to the village, helping the poor, caring for the sick, teaching young mothers not to make the same mistakes she had. And in doing so, she found a different kind of wealth. Not gold. Not status. But forgiveness. And in the quiet moments, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the wind carried the laughter of children, she would sit beside Ayanda and whisper, "I thank the ancestors every day that you are still here." And Ayanda would smile. Because she had learned the most important lesson of all. The village changes forever. Years passed. The village changed. The women no longer measured their worth by beauty alone. The men no longer chose their wives based only on appearance. And though the memory of Ayanda's curse remained, it was not spoken with fear. It was spoken with respect. Because Ayanda had not let the curse break her. She had broken it. Not with magic. Not with another sacrifice. But with her own strength. And in doing so, she changed the village forever. The legacy of Ayanda. By the time Ayanda grew old, she had become a legend. Not because she was once beautiful. Not because she was once desired. But because she had learned the truth that so many had forgotten. That beauty fades. That vanity is an illusion. That real power comes not from how you look, but from who you are. And when Ayanda finally closed her eyes for the last time, the village gathered not to mourn, but to honor her. For she had lived not as a cursed woman, but as a wise one. And her story lived on.